Good afternoon and welcome to the Hibs Observer Thursday briefing with myself, Liam Bryce, joined by Murray Grayston to look ahead to Saturday's trip to Kilmarnock in the Scottish Premiership and also discuss the news out of Easter Road last night. Nicky Cadden, the latest on his injury, which, the headline is kind of not as bad as it could have been, certainly when it comes to a hamstring injury, but we'll get to that in due course. Just as always, before we get started, folks, a word for our new sponsor. It's S1 Jobs. So Hibs Observer, is now brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Edinburgh and the surrounding area, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. So start your search today. Murray, thanks again for joining us. How are you getting on?
Not too bad. Thank you for having me back on. Good to be back. And as I may have mentioned, there'll be a few fans having some Jack Ross flashbacks because I've turned up with a turtleneck on today to pay homage to the great man.
He's turned up in character today for today's Thursday briefing. I think the last time we had you was, I know you were on to preview the United game. Obviously, there's a lot happened since then. Hibs now up to third in the Premiership table, obviously going out the Scottish Cup in the weekend, but I mean that kind of run of beating Celtic, Dundee United away, the scenes up at Tannadice, and then winning the Derby. I suppose that's what it's all about. Those wee runs as a football fan, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean the last few kind of weeks or months have been brilliant, and even when you look at the Celtic and Dundee United games, both filled with mild controversy, is what we'll call it. But it was nice to see that falling in our favour for a change. To be honest, I think that's kind of testament to where we're at the moment. We're in a position where we're going well, and when you're going well, things like that do seem to fall in your favour. So it's great. Up to third place. I don't think many of us would have imagined it a few months ago, but here we are, and it's a great place. And even exiting the Scottish Cup, I was in amongst the crowd on Sunday there, and the atmosphere was still good despite the defeat, which was good to see. I think the fear was we would go there and take a bit of a beating, and perhaps that would kind of set us back quite a bit. But it's all been great, and even when you see the reaction to Hibs coming out and praising the support we had, there's been a lot of fans who have been rattled, I think would be possibly. So and you know what, that shows how the kind of position we're in is. We're getting to that point where people are kind of coming for us, but that's what you want. You want to be kind of pressing up the top there, and people are coming for you rather than us being at the bottom and chasing and ridiculed like we probably were at the start of the season.
Be there to be shot. I think there was a kind of sort of misplaced cynicism around that statement. I think a lot of people just took it in isolation as Hibs thanking the fans for the Celtic game, and obviously that was part of it, taking 7,000 down there. But it was more a kind of culmination of, I think, a thank you for the sort of the support over these last few months, because I mean you only have to go back a few months to in the relationship between the club and fans, and say maybe October, November time, it was a really low ebb. So to me, it felt more like acknowledging the entire turnaround rather than just saying, "Oh, thanks for buying all these tickets for a solitary cup tie." Would you agree with that? I thought it was more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it probably is that. And another day, the board have got to take credit where it's due, but with kind of how things have been turned around. But instead of coming out and saying, look at the great job we've done, it's thanking the fans who have been the kind of driving force behind that and stuck with the team despite the kind of poor start to the season. Stuck behind David Gray especially, and I think that is what it was. It wasn't a here's a thanks for the one-off support, great, see you later. It was a acknowledging how good the support has been recently and how good the run has been recently, and kind of celebrating the fact that the club is in a good position, which isn't something we always get the chance to do. So I think we've got every right to take advantage of that when it's possible.
Yeah, exactly. I think clubs sometimes probably don't do enough of that, kind of capitalise on the good moments, because I suppose they can be quite fleeting at times, as everybody who supports, most people who support a football team will know. So I mean, it felt like a kind of mini chapter in the season, that almost, I think, starting with the Celtic game at home and Dundee United, and then Edinburgh Derby, and then the cup tie. It was, it ended, because it ended, with Hibs getting up to third place. I kind of hesitate to say that Celtic Park was a free hit, but in a way it was. I don't think many of the 7,000 went down there really genuinely expecting to win the game. It was more kind of hope, and as you say, a sort of thank you for how the team have turned it around in recent weeks. So now it's kind of, I feel like we're kind of, there's a line been drawn under that wee period now, and it's on to Hibs first of all cementing a place in the top six. 4 games to go until the split. Hibs are, I think it's 6 points ahead of Motherwell, possibly 7 again of Hearts. So strong position going into these final 4 games before the split, Murray. But I mean, it's in this league, you can't take anything for granted, really, can you?
No, we've been at the bottom looking up, and I think that's a big thing that we kind of need to focus on in the coming games. 4 games coming up before the split, so as much as we're in third place, lose all 4 of those games and you could find yourself in the bottom 6 and you've got absolutely no chance of Europe. So I think that needs to be the kind of first focus, as much as it sounds like a kind of pessimistic goal, hitting the top 6, but get yourself in there and in the reckoning in the first place. And then one of the big things David Gray's been talking about is kind of looking up and chasing the side ahead of you. Now that's I believe a 16-point gap to Rangers. Whether that'll still be the same goal, I don't know, and it's going to be interesting to see how he now motivates the players that we're in a different position and we're not so much chasing, we're the side being chased.
Yeah, I think it's 16 points. It's still quite a gap to Rangers, but I don't think really David Gray can. He can't really change his messaging at this point, because it has been for the entire season. When Hibs were sitting at the bottom of the league, it's just can you try and catch the team in front of you? Can you try and just move up that one place at the table? Because I mean, at one point, literally everybody was ahead of Hibs. So I don't think you can maybe get to third and then just say, oh well, let's start looking down and trying to stay away from the teams that are below us. I think whether it's feasible or realistic or not, I think you just have to keep looking up the way, in the sense of, can you put as many points on the board as possible? What can you do to close that gap to the team above you, even if 16 is probably, I think it'd be a real surprise at this stage if that was overturned, as much as, Rangers are having a pretty shocking season. It would take a huge turnaround. Stranger things have happened. Hibs have risen from bottom of the league to third. I don't think, just as I say, I don't think David Gray can really change his messaging. I think he will continue to look up the table until it's no longer, mathematically possible for Hibs to move up any higher than third. And then if you just, as I say, keep putting those points on the board, then I think the knock on from that is that third place then hopefully takes care of itself. But at least for the next few weeks, Hibs are going to be without Nicky Cadden. So obviously that's the headline on today's show. So we better get stuck into that. Hibs put a statement out last night, just in the scan that Nicky has suffered a slight hamstring strain, which meaning he will be out for a few weeks. David Gray reacted to that, said, "I'm gutted personally for Nicky. He was doing really well. So an injury at this stage of the season is a blow for him and for us. The hamstring strain isn't as bad as it could have been. He'll miss a couple of weeks, and with that in mind, the international break comes at a good time. He will still have a massive part to play this season. Now we'll work hard with our medical and sports science teams, and we'll hopefully get him back on the pitch as quickly as we can." So I mean, there's always a fear, isn't there, when you see a player going off holding a hamstring, because there is, I mean, aside from the most kind of minor cramp or tweaks, there's really no such thing as a good hamstring injury. It seems to always at least mean a few weeks out, and I think Nicky Cadden, even for a short period of time, is probably one of the last players that Hibs would want to lose at this important stage of the season. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And I think one of the big things is, I always say, some of the worst injuries come when no one's around you. When a player goes down without any contact, that's a fear. And I think that was the kind of feeling amongst the crowd, is when you see them kind of limping away, having not been involved in a kind of meaty challenge, albeit I think chasing down, was it Jota when he was running through? Probably just about as physically demanding as any challenge would have been. But it was scary, and I think the kind of 45 minutes plus that we had without Nicky Cadden in the park on Sunday showed just the impact he's had, because I mean, I'm down in the west coast of Scotland, as you can imagine. There's a lot of Celtic fans surrounding me, and it's the kind of poking fun at me. It would have been nice if Hibs to attack in the game. And I don't think it was actually that we didn't attack. I think in the second half in particular, we got into some really good positions, but it's the kind of positions where you want a Nicky Cadden on the ball who can ping a cross in, whether that be, from 25, 30 yards, whether it be from the byline, that causes problems. And I think what really showed on Sunday was not having that, especially against Celtic, where you've not got, a dozen opportunities to do that. You've maybe got 2 or 3. So you want real quality in there, and I think that's what lacked, and I think that's what stopped us really creating anything at Celtic Park.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. It's kind of been evident. It kind of speaks for itself. Sorry, just how kind of important and how crucial Nicky Cadden has been to Hibs' turnaround. I think he's one of the sort of main reasons why this sort of the switch to the 3-4-1-2 has worked, because you need guys who can play that wing back role, guys who can go both ways, can attack and defend. It's never as simple as just a winger could slot back into it or a full back can move forward. Yet you do have to have a pretty broad range of qualities. And I think Cadden certainly brought that. I mean, you can see that in his numbers. We're going to have a piece on the website later this afternoon, just kind of underlining how important he's been to Hibs in kind of all areas, because he's kind of at the top of the charts for a lot of different metrics when it comes to the kind of underlying numbers, the stats. He's a really, really important player. So I just keep a wee eye out for that on the website, folks, if you are a subscriber. But as I'm saying, I suppose the positive thing when Sunday was that he was able to walk off, and then I think Hibs putting out a statement saying it's only going to be a few weeks. I don't think it's the kind of thing they would do if they weren't quite if they weren't very confident in that timeline. I know, because there's been a couple of friends of the Hibs Observer pointed out, is this going to be a few weeks, or is it going to be an Ellie Yuan type few weeks, where a few weeks turns into another few weeks and turns into... I think if Hibs are putting out a statement, they are going to be very confident in the timeline, and that it is going to be a couple of weeks. I think Yuan's injury was a bit of an unusual case, and that I don't think when David Gray kept saying, he's going to be back soon, he'll be back soon, I think he wasn't just kind of fobbing it off and kicking the can down the road. I think that was more a case of Yuan's injury was a bit unusual and it was causing more problems. So as I said, I think if the Hibs putting out the statement, the fact that you've got the international break coming up as well, it's a good time for that to come, because I genuinely think you're getting to the stage of the season now as well where it'll not just be Cadden. There'll be other guys in the squad who are probably nursing wee issues here and there. I think you get to March, April, been a long season. It is as much as it can be, I think, frustrating, interrupting the sort of momentum of games into the end of the split. I think maybe from a squad perspective, it's possibly not the worst thing. I know you have guys who are going away in international duty, but I think to get some guys maybe rested up and get more minutes, maybe bounce games into guys, more training time on the pitch for guys that are, who are still coming back. Ellie Yuan's not had a lot of minutes. Marvin Ekpiteta's back in amongst the squad, but he's not getting minutes. Alassane Mane, he's kind of still building up, still acclimatising to Scottish football. I think you even saw on Sunday there that Kieran Bowie coming off when he did sort of suggests that Hibs are still managing his minutes carefully. I don't think if you're kind of fully confident in him being able to play 90 after 90 after 90, I don't know if you would have taken him off when you necessarily did at Celtic Park when you're chasing the results. So I think that suggests they're still being very careful there. So I think the overall with Cadden and then the international break coming up, obviously you don't want to lose him at all to injury, but I think that it's fair to say that this could have been a lot worse. Yeah,
no, that absolutely could have been. Like you say, it's one of the first things I thought when I seen the statement coming out. Beyond when I first seen it, I was like, oh no, am I going to click on this and it's going to be he's out for a significant period of time. So when you see it's a few weeks, that's a positive, and obviously it touched upon the international break, which, albeit we've got a good bit of momentum behind us at the moment, might come at a good time, because aside from Nicky Cadden's injury, just in terms of, like you touched upon, some of the players that are coming back are adjusting. It's almost like the manager classic phrase of a mini pre-season to try and get them back in, because I think players like an Ellie Johan especially, well, not a like-for-like replacement, the creativity he brings to the team if he's back in there and fit, could be vital while Nicky Cadden's out.
Yeah, you do need to replace that creativity somehow, don't you? Because it's, as I said, you'll be able, if you're subscribe to the site, you'll be able to see in the piece that we put up later just kind of how important how high up he is in the sort of attacking areas, Nicky Cadden. So somebody needs to step in and fill that void, and whether it's it's somebody stepping into that same position, or whether you say, I think the likes of Ellie Yuan coming back in and finding a place for him. But I suppose another kind of if you're going to take positives from that situation, Hibs are pretty strong on that left side. I think Jordan Obita is he's a very able replacement to step in. He's one of the team's best players this season. I don't think him necessarily not playing as much this season has been a reflection on him. It's because Cadden's come in, he's been so good, he's been so well suited to that left wing back role. Obita could also play in the back three if needed, but you've had the emergence of Jack Iredale, so it's been a bit of a frustrating season for Obita, but he's an experienced player. He's one of those guys who you'd imagine would be ready to step in and do a job when called upon. And it's not the I think in other areas of the pitch, maybe certainly earlier on in the season, if Hibs had, if they'd lost certain people who dropped out, then you'd thinking, okay, that this team's really in bother here. But it's there is decent depth on that left side, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's not harsh on Jordan Obita to say that we'll lose some attacking output with him coming in, but like I say, I think last year he was our player of the year, if I remember correctly. Defensively, I think he brings a lot. He's a very good defender, hence how he can kind of slip back into that left-sided centre-back kind of role as well. So, perhaps that's something that will maybe free up some positions further up the park to put less defensive responsibility on them and allow you to maybe to try your hand at putting a few more attacking players in those kind of central roles, because you've got that fallback of someone who's very defensively solid. Maybe it won't be an exact change in shape, but a kind of change in personnel that gives players different roles within the same shape. Is possibly something that we could kind of see from it. And like you say, I'm not worried when I see Jordan Obita's name in the team sheet, and I think that's the main thing. It's more so that just a kind of sadness of not seeing Nicky Cadden's name there, rather than being fearful about who comes in to replace him.
Yeah, exactly. I think you've summed it up nicely there. You're not concerned to see his name on the team sheet at all, really, are you? So just looking ahead to this weekend, Kilmarnock away, always a tricky fixture. Can be a bit of a battle. I know that game, Hibs went to Rugby Park back in September. Wasn't a classic by any means. You can get that type of game at Rugby Park. I know you worked down Ayrshire way. What have you seen of Kilmarnock? What do you make of them?
I think Derek McInnes has been there long enough now. It is a classic Derek McInnes team. More often than not, they'll set up 4-4-2 and they work really hard. Like in terms of a lot of the goals they've scored recently have come off pressing up high, forcing mistakes, forcing errors, and scoring off the back of them. And I think you've seen that particularly when they beat St Johnstone 3-1. St Johnstone are a team that try and play out from the back, and it just didn't work. They couldn't seem to beat Kilmarnock's press, and I think that's going to be a key factor for us, because we know what it's like trying to beat the press, and perhaps we've got some players in there that have been known for having a mistake in them, and it's just trying to make sure that's completely kicked out of the game on Saturday. And I think if we can, then that's where you get them. See if you can beat that press. That's when you start to suddenly have a kind of overload going forward. And I think it's, as much as you'd quite like to see when you're under pressure, sometimes just route one, lob the ball up the park. I think if we can play through that press, that's where we'll get joy, when you suddenly get players driving into space and you're unleashing a kind of Martin Boyle through the middle, because I think that's the one place you can get at them. I think in the kind of middle of defence, there's a lot of kind of chopping and changing, and someone with the pace of Martin Boyle on what is a very fast park as well, will probably get a little bit of joy there, and that's probably how I think we're best getting at them on Saturday.
Yeah, I think Hibs can all but secure a place in the top six with a victory this weekend. Not quite mathematically, but it would be very much be 1 foot in the top six for post-split. So again, it's a very big gap. Every time come on one of these things and you talk about the next game, and it's as if sometimes you think, am I over egging it and saying this is a really big game? But I think for for months on end, every game has felt like a really big game, hasn't it?
Yeah, but because we were chasing for so long,
Yeah.
every game was massive, and because for so long we weren't in that third position, there was that as well. That if we drop points, we fall further behind after weeks of good work trying to get ourselves up there, and that's certainly the case now, kind of more than ever. Especially, I think the closer you get to the split, every game just has more importance because you start to see that picture of. Instead of it being, we lose this week, well, oh well, there's next week to kind of claw that back. It's now at the point where if you lose and drop points, you're running out of time. And okay, we're in a kind of enviable position just now, but there is always that slight fear factor of, well, if we allow one of these other teams back into it, suddenly you're not in that position and you're one of the teams in the chasing pack. So I think this week's a good chance to hammer home, we're in the top six, we're there to stay, we're in third place, we're not going to give up this position without a fight. And I think that just kind of sums it up. I don't think it is just a case of, you talk about every game as being the biggest game that we've had in ages. I think this quite literally will be and could very much be the case right up until the end of the season because of how tight the league table is.
Aye, exactly. So just to finish up, I will ask you the same question that I asked Craig on Monday. 4 games left until the split. Kilmarnock away, St Johnstone at home, Rangers away, and then Dundee at home. What sort of points return would you be looking for and happy with from those 4 games?
Of course, the optimist in you is thinking probably 10.
Well, I mean, you've the right to be optimistic because nobody would have thought that Hibs were going to take 9 points from Celtic, Dundee United, and Hearts. Really, would they? Well, I say nobody, but not. There would have been hope for that, but not anybody. I don't think too many people would have been, cast iron certainty. Yeah, Hibs are going to take 9 points from that. So it's you've got the right to be optimistic. I think in predictions now.
I think the way you look at that optimistically is you you're winning your games out with Rangers, and then if you can go there and get a point, brilliant. But then again, it's a Rangers team that people have been able to get at this season, so there's that to hang upon. So I don't think you go into any game not expecting to have a chance at picking up all 3 points. I think the kind of realist in me says that if you come away from those games with 7 or 8 points, then I think you're quite happy. If you pick up 2 points in the road and win your home games, then I think that's more than enough to kind of hold the position that we're in just now. And I think I wouldn't be disappointed by that. But I know we're capable of going there and keeping on the good form that we've got going just now. And I don't think we should not accept, but I don't think we should settle for, thinking that we need to be pessimistic about it.
Yeah, you don't need to write off games at Ibrox for example. There's no kind of reason for that. And then 2 very winnable home games. I know Rugby Park is always tricky. There's been a lot of draws there in recent times, for what I can remember. But it's it's still a winnable game. So I think it is a decent run to end the to have this run into the split. I mean, I think you do want a big game in there. With that game against Rangers coming up, a big challenge. I think you do want something like that there because another statement win. Potentially, just builds the momentum even further going into the split. So there's a lot to be enthusiastic about, a lot to be excited about. But without looking too far ahead, it's Rugby Park up this Saturday for Hibs as the run into the split continues. David Gray's side in a really strong position heading into these final few fixtures. And who really would have thought back in October and November that we would be saying that? So it's been a huge turnaround. As I said earlier in the show, just it felt like the close of a wee mini chapter. That game at Celtic Park on Sunday there, and now it's on to the final stages of the league season. So let's see where Hibs end up over these next few weeks and months. Murray, thank you for joining us as always. At short notice as well, I do appreciate that.
No worries. Thanks for having me. Always good to be on.
Exactly, absolutely, mate. Always good to have you. Thanks for joining us, folks. If you've not subscribed to the channel yet, please do consider hitting the like and subscribe button. Helps us continue to grow the channel, means we can bring you more of these videos, and it also means you get a notification every time we go live, so you'll never miss a show. Thank you again for joining us, folks. Hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Hope you enjoy your weekend too. So we'll speak to you again very, very soon. Cheers.